Welcome to Put Up Your Spooks, the retro horror podcast for 80s and 90s television. My name's Jeff. I'll be bringing you gritty tales from the best decade in horror.
And I'm Ryan. I know what scared Canadian children in the 90s. This week's theme,
Lost in the Woods.
The episode that I have chosen for you this week is a spooky little tale I like to call an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark called Watcher's Woods. This is one of...
It just rolls off the tongue.
It does, yeah. They knew what they were doing. This is one of my favorite episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark. There are two main characters, Sarah and Kelly. Kelly is a spoiled rich girl. Sarah is an outdoorsy type, very close to Jeff's and my heart. They're both at summer camp for 2 weeks, and Kelly is there because her parents wanted her out of the house. Sarah is there because she fucking loves going camping and doing activities and getting merit badges. Sarah is desperately trying to make friends, but Kelly's doesn't like her. Her friends don't like her. They're like the mean girls. So they steal her vest and stuff, and she comes looking for it, and they're like, oh, you don't know about Watcher's Woods? Let me tell you. This is where you get blipped by a demon called the Watcher. In Are You Afraid of the Dark, they were always saying demoned with an extra D at the end.
Really?
Yeah.
The Watcher. A demon who guards the woods. A demon.
Now,
I don't know why.
Was blipped their way of just bleeping out a swear...
No, you get
You know,
blipped like,
proactively?
you know when you shut off an old-fashioned TV and it goes bloop?
Oh, yeah, that's blooped.
That's true. That is blooped. Close enough, though.
I like to think we can cut in our own swears, but I challenge you, when you edit this, to put in that quote and put in an actual bleep every time she says blipped,
Okay.
and I think it'll be pretty funny.
What's Watcher's Woods? You're new, so I'll tell you. It's a place where people get lost, vaporized, erased. The legend goes way back. Indian tribes, colonial soldiers, pioneers, all gone, never seen again.
So where is this place?
No one knows. They say it moves like a shark looking for victims. And once you realize you're inside, it's too late. They in 1919. Tomorrow will be 75 years to the day.
So they're like, have a good night, and they leave her alone. And then the next day, it's time for all the girls to go off completely on their own with no supervision whatsoever and hike out into the woods. So lo and behold, Kelly and Sarah get matched up together. Now, Kelly just wants to fuck off and go swimming, even though it looks freezing at the summer camp right now where they are. The wind is
very
blowing.
much Canada,
They're wearing
yeah.
jackets.
They're like
full
Manitoba.
jackets. She's not going swimming. And Sarah, no, she wants to hike. She wants to get her merit badges. So Kelly, being the little schemer, says, hey, I know there's a pheasant's nest if you'll come swimming with me. And she's like, okay, cool. So they go, and she's like, oh, it's through there. So Sarah goes through the clearing, and then Kelly's like, you're pretty dim. Adios.
For somebody smart, you're pretty dim. Adios.
And she steals her fucking backpack, leaving her out in the woods that she doesn't know to die.
In Canada.
And then leaves in
I would like
coldest,
to
frigid
reiterate
Canada.
that exposure is the number one cause of death.
Yeah.
And these kids in Are You Afraid of the Dark? I mean, death is around every corner.
Yeah. Well, they know it, so they have to live every day like it's their last. And that means potential manslaughter. So Kelly wanders off. Sarah comes out. Hey, there's no pheasants there, but she's like, fuck, I'm all alone. So she wanders off. Kelly gets lost. Now, she's been at this camp for many, many years, so she knows these woods. And she says, uh-oh, don't know what's going on. She puts down her backpacks. They disappear. The trail closes in behind her. Cut to, it's nighttime. Both of these girls still lost. Kelly finds a glowing green clearing and says, whew, looks good. I'm going to go check this out. So she goes in there. Immediately, bam, rotted horse head. Or sheep head or something.
Sheep head, I think?
Fucking awesome, whatever the case. Believe they probably used a real sheep head.
Like I said, Canada wilderness is harsh.
Mm-hmm. And what what I'm telling a bad story because I didn't mention, when they were telling her the tale of the Watcher's Woods, they mentioned the 3 lost trail makers who were presumably campers who got and so she basically stumbles into their camp. Now, they've been missing since like 1932 or something.
1919.
They jump out of nothingness, capture Kelly, and they're these craggy old disgusting hag women, spirits who have magical powers and live in an encampment that's all rotted and covered in flies and sheep heads and floating fire pots. It's pretty awesome. They did this thing where they hung like monofilament so it would just kind of wave around and catch the light.
Really?
Yeah, it looks really cool and spooky. And
by monofilaments, do you mean fishing line?
Yeah, like fishing line.
It's cooler when you call them monofilaments.
It's much cooler. It's much more filmy. So she's captured. She's captured by the missing trail makers. Meanwhile, Sarah is wandering around, completely lost in the dark, in the cold, in Canada, bagless, no pheasants. And she hears a voice. Sarah. She turns around. This girl's not a very good actor, but she sells a couple of moments. She turns around, and in the tree, the face of the Watcher appears, and he's fucking cool. In listening to all the interviews with DJ McHale that I've been listening to, he keeps talking about his makeup artist on the show, who really had no experience. She did like a couple of TV shows and like stage makeup, so she had never done special effects or creatures before, and she crushed it. She absolutely did a fantastic job. And so he's this like tree monster. He's this old dude with like a tree growing all around him. And so he frightens her. She runs away. And then we cut back to Kelly. She's being tortured. They shoot her with an arrow, but amazingly it goes right through her because they still got that camper spirit. They still want to get their badges. So that first they're doing their archery badge. I mean, it keeps cutting back and forth from Kelly to Sarah. I can't remember exactly in what order. Kelly says, hey, I know where your whistles are. I can go get them. They say, okay, go. And then they're
so
like...
the idea is that these 3 ghost witches who were stranded in the woods decades ago, they haunt the woods until they can get their whistles.
Until they can get their whistles, because the Watcher made a deal with them. And they think Kelly is their friend who betrayed them. So there was presumably a 4th trail maker who made a deal with the Watcher to escape if she handed over the other souls of her friends.
Really?
Why did you steal our whistles?
I didn't. I don't even know you.
You tricked us. You left us here to die.
Worse, you left us for the Watcher.
So pretty dark.
Very dark.
So yeah, they're fucking with Kelly. They recapture her. They put a bucket of mice next to her cage because they know she's afraid of mice. I don't know what they're getting out of this, like torturing her in this way. Maybe they're just like paying it forward, like shit rolls downhill. The Watcher fucked them over, so now they got to fuck everyone else over. Or maybe they're just super upset because she stole their whistles in 1932.
1919.
So Sarah finds the camp. And she finds Kelly in the cage, and she's like, get me out of here. I'm sorry I stole your bag, blah, blah, blah.
Eh?
Oh, and she says, they think I stole their whistles. I wouldn't do that. And Sarah's like, you did it to me. And it should be noted that, again, with the inclusivity, because Sarah is black and Kelly's a white girl. So if you were a kid watching Nickelodeon in the 90s, you saw your face on screen. Sarah might have been kind of white. I don't know if she represented the true like black experience in America at that time, but... still, she was up there. She was up there on screen.
Could have been the black experience in Canada.
It could have been. It probably was. So, she's trying to get Kelly out of the cage. The hag ladies come and catch her. But she says, I'll find your whistles. And they're like, okay, whatevs. But if you don't come back, we're going to fucking kill this kid. And so she runs off. Now the Watcher's chasing her at every turn. He's appearing in puddles. Another very cool effect. I don't know how they did it. He pops up out of the ground as like a skeleton monster with no flesh, but with eyeballs. I don't know who copied who. Evil Dead 2 probably did it first. And that's another cool. I love when he pops out of the pile of leaves as a skeleton and then turns into the Watcher. She's like, yo, back up. I can torch your woods. She has a lighter. Oh, because Kelly, these kids are like 12, and Kelly was going to have a smoke in the very beginning. And she's like, no, you can't. You'll burn down the woods. And then she threatens the Watcher with her lighter, and he gets really afraid, except that it's raining. We can actually audibly hear it raining, so I don't know. Maybe the woods would still go up. Moot point. He backs off. She's such a good trail maker that she finds the North Star, and even though the woods have the capability of closing and changing around her, she still finds her way back to camp.
I mean, if you can navigate through the stars, there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah, Watcher can't change the stars, yo. He's confined to Earth. So she finds camp. She gets the whistles. Hightails it back into Watcher's Woods. This is how you know she's a hero. She goes back into danger, unlike the fourth Trailmaker from 1932. And all of our listeners, correct me if I'm wrong on that date that the Trailmakers disappeared.
1919.
Gets back to camp, trips. I wish they'd cut to a close-up of her foot hitting a root or something, because it's one of those really terrible, we didn't have any time to shoot this trips where she just like falls over clumsily. And one of the whistles goes sailing into the bucket of mice. The old hag ladies pick up the whistles, but they say, "It's 3 we need to break the spell. What a nasty trick to pull on us." Cut in, actual quote here.
It's 3 we need to break the spell, not 2. What a nasty thing to do to us.
Kelly's like, no, it's over here. And she's like, fuck her. She's a lying bitch. And then
Blip
Sarah.
her. She's
Blip
a lying
her.
blip.
The bitch. They tie Sarah to a guillotine, and they're going to chop her head off. And at the very last second, Kelly overcomes her fear of the mice, gets the whistle, throws it. They blow 3 sharp blasts, which is the sign for I'm in danger. And
SOS.
they disappear, and Sarah does not get her head chopped off. They find their way out of the woods. Now they are friends, and each has learned a valuable lesson. I think Sarah probably didn't really learn anything. She was just still pretty good.
Yeah, she was a good person who performed well under pressure.
Yeah. Kelly learned not to be such a bitch all the time and steal people's backpacks and leave them for dead in the woods. So they get out to the road, and then an old-timey 1930s car drives by, and it's got the 3 Trailmakers, but they're children, and the driver is totally the Watcher. So I don't know what the hell they're saying there, but something crazy. So they drive away into forever, and Kelly and Sarah are found by the other campers. Again, only one adult in attendance. And they live happily ever after, presumably, unless they're still stuck in Watcher's Woods. We'll never know.
Thank you for that recap, Ryan. I have thoughts about this episode.
Please, lay your thoughts on me.
First of all, amazing episode. You are right to love that episode because it was awesome. But just starting from the very beginning of the episode, the member of the Midnight Society who is trying out and is offering the tale,
Sam.
I thought they had to be blindfolded.
Yeah, they took her blindfold off.
It's just
crazy.
She
they shirked the rules.
She was.
I mean, she was blindfolded,
she
but they let her see the camp, which is crazy. It's only because they had to do the reveal of Sam being a woman.
Right.
So her big, curly blonde hair could flop out.
Strange that they didn't blindfold her.
Yep.
Double standard. I'm not a fan.
Definitely. I thought the same thing, but I just let it go because she was perfect.
When Sam is talking about like ghost stories that she could tell, she name checks the Manitou and the Wendigo.
Manitou.
And so those are like Iroquois and First Nations Canadian, native lore.
I was very excited about the Manitou mention because, I mean, I obviously had heard it before because I watched this episode as a kid, but I did not remember it. And then Ed, our friend, and you guys, and we all watched the movie The Manitou. And as far as I knew at that time, that was my first, exposure to the Manitou. So when she said it in this episode, I was like, "Oh, Manitou!" Manitou in Manitoba. So
it should be noted that Sam is a photogenic, 12 or 13-year-old girl, and the redheaded dude who is the spokes nerd for the Midnight Society. He's the guy with the glasses that comes
Gary,
out.
he's not redheaded.
Or whatever. Maybe it's just all the firelight. He is creeping on her hard.
Oh yeah. He's a nerd. He's like a 14-year-old nerd. He doesn't know any better.
He's 19 in that scene, and it is inappropriate.
Yeah,
but moving on.
Gary. He's a weatherman now.
I like that it's a tale within a tale.
Yeah. Yep.
So she's telling a story, and then
in which they tell a
in the story they tell a story about Watcher's Woods, and Watcher's Woods is a cursed roving location guarded by a demon.
It moves like a shark.
But even when you get into Watcher's Wood, there's more dangers still. They're these magic witch hag
yeah.
ghosts who operate independently of the demon watcher of the woods.
Multiple levels.
Works on many, many levels. The skin sheep head was awesome. The demon was awesome. When the Skelemound popped up out of the ground, my jaw hit the floor. That was such good effects.
Yeah.
And so she does her clumsy trip, and she finds a fleshless skull on the ground, horrifying enough. And then it shoots up into the air and becomes a giant demon.
And then she still steps to it.
And she's
this
still...
lady has brass balls.
Yeah, still confronts it. Ryan, you need to make a Watcher's costume.
I would love to. I don't know how they fucking did it. I gotta get DJ McHale on the horn.
Start grabbing some screen caps. Fire up that Blu-ray of yours and make it happen, because
that would be good.
That would
be one of those costumes that one person at Comic-Con understands, and it
they
makes
would
it all worth
die.
it. Yeah,
they would see you and they would die. Maybe they'd try to pull out a lighter and burn you. So make sure it's flame retardant.
Flame cannot harm me. Oh god, it burns.
So at the end, Sarah, which is a total Labyrinth kind of reference. Sarah
was a very popular name in the 80s/90s.
That's true. I knew a few Sarahs. But she returns the whistles, breaks the spell of the ghosts, and I don't know why they're demon hag witches.
They're so gross, I don't care. They're so awesomely gross. They have moss in the corners of their mouths, and one of them only has one eye.
Know if one of them was a man with makeup on to make him look like a woman, Pet Sematary style, or was just a woman who had a lot of prosthetic,
a lot of stuff on,
makeup on.
I think maybe they were just super haggy because they had no souls.
Or did they go into the Watcher's Woods as young Pathfinder girls or whatever they were called, and their skills were such that they survived until they were old, decrepit, toothless, one-eyed?
Good question. So the Watcher definitely took their souls as children.
Okay.
And at one point, one of them says, "Soon you'll be old and dead as we are." So they're definitely ghosts.
Right.
So I don't know if they become dead and ghosts as soon as the Watcher takes their souls, or if it just happened later and it's all a coincidence.
It is very curious. But probably the greatest mystery of that episode was, as they're leaving the woods after the curse is broken and they have freed the souls from the Watcher's Woods demon, they see that sweet old 1930s car that Ryan talked about, and the three girls are 11 or 12 or something in the back. We can presume that is their pure soul essence. They look like three rich kids, and their driver, the chauffeur, is the demon watcher in the woods. Are we to presume that in the 1940s
1919
he brought them there and murdered them all?
I think that's...
Because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
You're saying the Watcher planned for them and posed as their chauffeur?
No, I'm saying there was a horrible, ghastly child murder, and then all their souls got bound to the woods, and so he's the demon who keeps these souls captive. It just doesn't make sense.
I think the Watcher predates them entering the woods. I think he's probably an eternal elemental demon.
So he's just fulfilling his bargain by just driving their souls?
Maybe he's just
back home?
That's it. Maybe that's it, because he promised to release their souls when... Good call, yeah. When they found their whistles, because he never thought that would happen.
All right.
Except he smiles and tips his hat to Sarah and Kelly, which I do not think he would do. So either all of that happened that we just said, and he's fulfilling his bargain, or they just didn't want to hire another actor and hoped nobody would notice.
But in terms of pure story structure... if you had taken, perish the thought, the Watcher of the Woods demon out of that story, you would have a story about three campers who lost their whistles and died and haunt the woods, and if they capture you, they won't let you go until you bring them their whistles.
Right. Also would be a fine story.
It fulfills all the classic elements of like a haunting story. But then you add that whole other
There's
layer
also a
about the
watcher.
demon. Yeah.
So many questions. Questions.
My final question.
Uh-huh.
Does the Midnight Society grow by one member every episode?
No. No, it does not. It only gets new members when there were contract disputes between Midnight Society actors and the production. Or when they just decided to quit.
But when a kid comes to the fire to tell their tale, to try to get in...
Because we're watching these wildly out of order, so...
Right, but
There'll
every
be like-
episode
there'll be an
is someone
episode-
presents a story, but they're not always new kids. They just go around the circle.
Yeah, they just go around the circle.
All right, I've only seen 2 episodes, so I kind of thought they brought a new kid every time.
No. They'll be like, Chuck had to leave us. There was never a Chuck. But now somebody's got to...
Is it possible they killed an A-Chuck?
He got lost in the woods
He got lost
trying
in
to leave the
woods,
Midnight Society.
Watcher's Woods, yeah.
And at one point, so when they first meet the old craggy ladies, one of them says, "We've waited. Oh, how we've waited." And I think I unconsciously ripped that off from my Advent story from the 16 Man Bag podcast.
All right, so we're doing something a little different this episode. We were struggling to find a good match for Lost in the Woods. And just a little note up front. I was looking at all these episodes of 80s shows for adults, and they're all on sets and they're all inside. And I was like, I don't know if there's ever been a 80s anthology horror show set in the woods, because when you shoot outside, it's much more costly and much more difficult. And I was like, wow, it seems like Are You Afraid of the Dark has a lot of outside shots.
Yeah.
That's kind of the beauty of Canada. But this episode of Freddy's Nightmares, entirely outdoors.
Yeah.
Incredible. Mm-hmm. All right. So, because we're doing an episode of Freddy's Nightmares, it's an hour-long show, which I am comparing and contrasting to a half-hour Are You Afraid of the Dark. So, if it feels like this recap is running long, I apologize. I'm going to do my best to get through it quickly. It's called Prime Cut, Season 2, Episode 15. Johnny, a middle-aged man in a suit, is fleeing through a war zone. He wakes up from his Vietnam flashback on a mountain with his schlubby friend. He tells him about his dream, and also that he was never in the Vietnam War. They are joined by their macho friend, and they wait for the guide that will take them on a backcountry hunting trip. The guide, a good-looking woman who calls herself Tracker, arrives and starts immediately with the sassy innuendos. Schlubby and Macho flip out and get super horny. When it's time to set up their tent, Tracker is frightened of the wooden tent stakes. Schlubby cuts his hand and she sucks out the blood. That night, she sleeps outside, and the guys in the tent hear bats. The next day, Tracker serves breakfast. She tries to get Johnny to eat a pot of worms and blood sauce, saying he needs to eat to survive. But Johnny refuses and wakes up. It was a dream. I may, as a goof, have you insert the horn sound from Inception every time they wake up from a different level of dream. Tracker asks Macho to help her in private. She says she has sensitive skin and needs him to rub maximum strength sunblock, called Sun Dead, all over her body. Later, she sneaks away with Schlubby and he gets lost. They all set out to find him, and Johnny reaches a cave where Schlubby has been tied up. Tracker is there in a vampire cape, snarling like a jaguar and feasting on Schlubby's neck. She attacks Johnny and he wakes up. It was just a dream. But Schlubby is still missing. Johnny reveals his suspicions to Macho, who shuts down the vampire talk by correctly pointing out that vampires cannot go out in sunlight. But then he remembers the sun-dead sunblock. They continue the search, find Schlubby tied up again. Tracker the vampire pounces, not to kill Johnny, but to embrace him. She wants to turn him into a vampire, but first he must feed off Schlubby. He resists and asks if there's any other way, but she tells him they just need to eat to survive. He pulls out a crucifix necklace to keep her away, and then he and Macho escape, only to fall down into a canyon. Johnny wakes up and he finds himself trapped in a canyon with the wreckage of a small plane, Tracker, and the butchered bodies of Macho and Schlubby. They crashed and were stranded weeks ago. Tracker, the plane's pilot, has been keeping them alive by cannibalizing the two dead guys. They hear over the radio that a search effort has been called off, and in other news, that an escaped killer is on the loose. Johnny accepts that they must eat to survive, and his feelings for Tracker grow. But he fears that his wife will eventually find him, because she never quits. The wife arrives and falls down into the same dead-end canyon. She's a horrible, gold-digging shrew stereotype, the opposite of Tracker in every way. They bicker jealously, have nightmares about eating each other, but eventually the wife is also forced to eat some of the dead guys. The escaped killer also falls down into the canyon, and they eat him right before a group of policemen searching for the criminal arrives and rescues them. The survivors leave the canyon together, now bonded by an insatiable appetite for human flesh.
Oh, well, that was very succinct. God bless you, sir.
I left out about 30 sub-levels of dreams.
Oh my god. I mean, you had to read that one out because it would have been impossible to do it off the cuff. This fucking episode, it was an hour long. It felt like 5 hours to me. It didn't help because the way I was watching it, there was an ad every like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And it kept being this one ad. Sorry to go off on a tangent here, but it kept playing this one ad over and over with like an Indian guru guy. And he was like, the way to enlightenment is not through drugs and chemicals. You have to find happiness on the inside. It does not come. But his message was mixed because he was like, people who come here find happiness through meditation but can't find happiness without... I was like, what, man, get your story straight.
So now I feel like you got to drop that
God, if I can find it, I guess. But it was a long commercial, and they would do two of them back to back, the same commercial. It played at least 20 times during my viewing of this episode, so it was maddening. It just wouldn't end. It wouldn't end. And then they kept like waking up from other levels of dreams, and it was like, there's a vampire. No, she's just not a vampire, but there's a plane crash, and They were stuck for like a couple of days, and they'd already stripped their friends to the bone.
So I gotta say, this episode was awesome.
This episode was the worst.
It was
so painful
awesome
to watch.
All right, hold on.
It was so random, but not in the... Well, maybe it was. Maybe like talking about it now, it's laughable, and maybe that means it was as random and crazy as the Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Darks from the last two episodes. I don't know.
Here, let me pitch this to you. There were dreams within dreams within dreams, and they were totally surreal, but based on the logic of Johnny's struggle to process that they had crashed, his friends had died, and that they had to eat them to survive. So in the beginning, the very first dream we see is that he's in Vietnam.
Uh-huh. In a business suit.
In a business suit. So, like, that's the plane crashing and them going down.
I guess.
And
or
then
it could be the trials of business.
He has this fantasy where he and his friends, like, are alive out in the woods, and Tracker is this monster who keeps telling him he has to eat to survive, and she's trying to feed him worms and blood, and like, she's this monster trying to corrupt him, and he keeps resisting because he doesn't want to resort to cannibalism. But eventually he does. And that's why it's so cartoonish. It's signaling you this is all a dream.
Very cartoonish. It really makes sense when you say it like that.
Yeah.
But the execution is so piss poor. Like the whole camping sequence where he's finding out she's a vampire, they're just sitting around eating worms and oatmeal. And then they'll be like, "Whoa, she sure is sexy." And then they'll be like, "Go to sleep. It's nighttime." And then the next morning it's like, "Boy, I sure love to have sex with her." And then like, "Hey, it's nighttime again. Let's go to sleep." "No, I don't like your oatmeal." "Oh no, you're a vampire." And it's very cartoony, but it's also very boring and super cheap looking. They were shooting in like Yosemite or somewhere gorgeous. But
would really like to know. I tried to look up where they were shooting.
The money is not on the screen.
Well, the money was on the screen with where they shot.
Oh, man,
that was all outdoors, baby.
And the acting was so terrible. And I mean, I hate to be so negative, but it is making me gleeful. And then, your summary is so wonderful, or your pitch is so wonderful and smart. Then when we finally get to the real world, and we're no longer in a dream, The guy's like, you know what? Eating my friends ain't so bad. Let's fucking fuck as much as we possibly can. I just can't stop fucking you. You're my favorite.
That was pretty awesome. I gotta say,
they would smell so bad.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess at that point you're just desperate.
Also, your sense of smell registers change, and if they smell bad all the time, they might not notice.
Get used to it.
However, it's a little unfortunate that when they get to base reality, that it still has that same goofy tone to it.
Yeah.
Because if that had all been a signal that this was all a surreal dreamscape, up until the point he wakes up in the plane crash, that would be pretty forgivable. You know, she's not a real vampire. You know, she wouldn't have a vampire cape out in the woods, etc.
I was questioning that until
it's all revealed to be his.
And well, the first time I tried to watch the episode, I didn't get that far. I only got to the point where she was like fully revealed to be a vampire, and I was like, oh god. And then I didn't watch the rest until a week later.
But yeah, unfortunately, it never really rose above that in its
not
kind of
at all.
In its writing. It was pretty goofy and pretty silly. So
was the main character? Was he in some like really popular fan? I didn't look it up because I forgot.
Tony Dow, Wally Cleaver,
Wally
from Leave It to Believer.
Cleaver. That I was like, this guy was played a child in some really famous sitcom. I just know it.
That was Wally Cleaver.
Oh my god. Oof.
All right, some notes. In a later episode called Dust to Dust, it revisits all those same characters as they deal with their addiction to human flesh. I love the Jaguar sound design of the vampire. I thought that was really cool. So I thought the wife was playing an extremely stereotypical greedy shrew type.
I couldn't pin her down because she was like, I just want his insurance money. And then she was like, I love you and I only want to be with you and no matter what it takes.
I mean, she was needy and greedy and seedy and terrible and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of put me in mind of something, you know, we saw in Tales from the Crypt, which is in a lot of these shows, Freddy's Nightmares, Tales from the Crypt, and Tales from the Dark Side. It's all about wives double-crossing husbands and husbands double-crossing wives and
because it was Hollywood in the 80s.
It was Hollywood in the 80s. So my question is, how many writers on those shows got divorced, murdered, or were murdered by their spouses?
Or ate flesh. Yeah,
or ate human flesh, yeah.
A lot of them were really hung up on Nam, too.
Say again?
I said a lot of writers in the 80s were really hung up on Vietnam, too.
Yeah.
They were probably all veterans who were divorced and flesh eaters.
So Tracker is played by Sandal Bergman, who was Valeria in Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, maybe
she was
protesting too much, but I gotta say, unlike the horrible shrew wife stereotype, she got to be coy, mysterious, sinister, capable, nurturing, romantic, comedic, cannibalistic.
Yeah.
All the great things an actress wants to play.
At least she is giving it some effort. She
was amazing.
She was very good, and
she was
especially
funny.
Since
she sold it.
A lot of her part was written extraordinarily cartoonish and very stupid.
But even
she put in 100%
character. Whereas the wife was like, I only want the money, and like she brings her hair dryer and like her hair curler out into the woods instead of food and water.
Fucking Spaceballs ripoff.
Yeah, she's horrible. But Tracker is like, she's a plane pilot. She's keeping them alive. She can hunt. She can track. She nurtures him back to life. She's also sexy and strong. She's funny. You know, I thought she was a pretty impressive character.
Yeah.
You know, if it had all sank to the level of what they made the wife.
Could have been a lot worse.
Could have been worse.
Her character. Everything else was worse.
So other notes about this episode. Freddy appears in 2 to 3 interludes.
Oh, God.
He makes some food puns in the beginning. It ends with a commercial for a down-home style cannibal restaurant. Totally unnecessary and
100% unnecessary.
forgettable.
I really hope that Robert Englund was getting paid very well to do this show because it was embarrassing how bad the interstitials were.
I mean, we have...
But he still gave it his all, too, no matter what.
We have at length explored his music career, and I think he's just in it for the love of the character, for the love of the game.
He's trying to shepherd the character, but
he's a showman.
Everyone is fighting him.
Time to rate these. All right, scare factor.
I mean, I guess the general scenario is kind of scary, like having to eat your buds and stuff.
It wasn't really played for.
It wasn't.
Factor.
No. Once again, with these adult horror anthologies, they were not played for scares whatsoever.
Yeah, I gotta say, Prime Cut, the snarling vampire attack may have been frightening to someone, but it really wasn't scary, and it didn't seem like it was played for scares either.
No, it was definitely played more goofy.
It was played for titillation, it was played for laughs, but not really for scary. But Watcher's Wood, scare factor high.
Scare factor very high.
Very high.
Aforementioned sheep's heads, aforementioned monofilaments, green light, nighttime, scary demon watcher, skullman, old hags.
Children dying in the woods.
Arrows through the guts. Fucking
guillotines.
Near decapitations.
Buckets of rats.
And just the general spookiness of like hearing your name called.
Yeah.
Out in the woods, like echoing at night.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Gross factor.
Sheep's heads, skull heads. The skull was meaty and veiny and eyeball-y too. And those hags are totally gross. However, I will give Freddy's Nightmares a high gross factor just for implied eating of rubbery, uncooked human flesh.
Also, like the plate of bloody worms.
And also smelly sex.
And the cannibalized, corpses and Freddy's little interludes.
Oh yeah, cannibal corpses.
Plane crash.
So I think Freddy takes it on the gross factor. Okay, what the factor?
I mean, I guess Freddy has to take it for what the factor because it just was like so ridiculously layer upon layer.
I mean, that demon, the whole demon spirit scenario, that demoned scenario is pretty weird. But yeah, I'm giving it to Freddy for, the first half is delusion, and the second half has all these crazy turns, like this runaway criminal shows up.
I mean, I certainly never knew what the fuck was going on.
I kind of liked that.
Given time.
You never know what's going to happen next. And that was never more on display than in that episode of Freddy's Nightmares.
Yeah.
All right, theme. Which one did the theme of Lost in the Woods better?
I mean, Freddy's Nightmares, they're lost in a ravine. Watcher's Woods, they're lost in the woods. I mean, this is a little stacked because I picked Watcher's Woods first, and then we had to find something to conform to it as best we could.
Yeah.
So it's not really fair, but certainly the theme of Lost in the Woods goes to Watcher's Woods.
Well, actually, counter-argument. They both take place entirely in the woods. But in Are You Afraid of the Dark, the kids get lost in the woods, but then Sarah navigates her way out and navigates her way back in.
Yeah.
And navigates her way back out.
But I would say that the woods in Watcher's Woods...
Freddy's Nightmares...
Well, they're more trapped by...
They're trapped in the woods.
A giant cliff.
It's
more rocky than woodsy.
Dead-end canyon.
Like, Watcher's Woods is way more foresty than the set of the Freddy's Nightmare
And the
episode.
demon is like the woods personified.
He is a woods, yeah.
Yeah.
He might as well say, Sarah, I'm woods.
Okay. I'll give the theme award.
I hope so.
To Are You Afraid of the Dark? So, is this a tie?
I'm going to give it a tie at most because Watcher's Woods is so much better than Freddy's Nightmares, just in terms of writing and filmmaking.
That's not the criteria by which
I know.
We judge
we may
these.
have to redo
Scare
our
factor,
criteria.
Gross factor, what the factor, and theme. Yeah,
I hate that because an inferior episode of television can easily outmatch a much better episode of television. I'll give it a tie on this one.
All right.
But I do not recommend watching Freddy's Nightmares.
I recommend it. Seek it out. Enjoy it. Learn how you can be free from chemicals and
wonder where your 4 hours went. I'm a person who is perfectly okay to be wasting time. Do it all the time. But I want those 4 hours back.
You'll never get those back unless this has all been a dream. Are you ready for my end of show segment?
I am. Lay it on me.
All right. So I have prepared a survival quiz for Ryan.
Oh, my.
As some of the listeners to the 16 Bag may know, I have studied survival with experts in the wilderness. And Ryan has also joined me
and I have gone with
some
Jeff
of his
sometimes.
lessons.
I'm not a master of survival disaster as much as a master of riddle disaster.
So let's see how well you do. First question. Is it safe to eat snow if you need water?
No. Lowers your core body temperature. And that's bad.
That is correct. If you were to try to use moss to find your direction in the woods, how would you do so?
You cannot. It is a myth. I don't know. It doesn't grow on the north side of the trees. That's all I know. Maybe there's a way you can use it.
In the northern hemisphere, the north side is shadier, so the moss grows on all sides, but it's thicker on the north side.
Huh.
What about anthills? Could you use anthills to find direction in the woods?
No, but I could probably eat some of the ants.
You could and should. They're packed full of protein.
And
but
tasty, too.
The south or southeastern side is warmer. And so
Wow.
ants tend to make
Is it
their
noticeably
anthills.
warmer to your hand or whatever?
Probably not to your hand, but to the ants that live there, it is.
So how the hell do you know?
You look at the anthills.
And there's more ants on one side?
Yeah.
Really?
The south or southeastern side.
Like crawling on it?
Anthills. It's
Yeah.
a hill of ants.
Correct.
You see it with your eyes.
So you see more ants crawling on the warmer side, is what you're saying?
You see the ant hills themselves, the structures, the ant hill homes, not just crawling around. An ant hill, it's like a pile of dirt with a hole in the
But
side.
how do you know which side of the anthill is warmer?
No. The ant hills are on the south or southeastern side.
Of what?
The tree.
The tree?
The tree.
There's no anthills on trees.
They're at the base of the tree.
Oh, okay.
All right. Next question. Which bugs are safest to eat? Shelled bugs, large bugs, colorful bugs, hairy bugs, or pungent bugs?
Oh, my. I don't know. Pungent bugs?
Wrong.
Oh, no.
You should avoid pungent, hairy, or colorful bugs.
Good to know.
What part of the snake indicates it is venomous? Don't say venom, you son of a bitch.
It's bands? It's colors?
It's eyes.
It's eyes?
Venomous snakes have elliptical pupils, and non-venomous snakes have round pupils.
Well, I'll be damned.
Except
if
for
I ever meet a snake.
Except for coral snakes.
Because I'm definitely going to make those, reverse them.
Should you use the Big Dipper or Little Dipper to locate the North Star?
Big Dipper.
How would you use the Big Dipper to locate the North Star?
Because the final star on its handle is the North Star?
Incorrect.
Shit.
If you take the front of the dipper and you follow it up in a straight line, you will see the North Star.
A straight line from where?
Picture the Big Dipper and picture the very front of the dipper ladle.
Uh-huh.
It's 2 stars.
Uh-huh.
And then you just follow that.
You, like, follow it from the bottom star through the top star and straight up?
And straight on until morning. If you are camping in the woods and you are attacked by a vampire, what is the best defense?
Fuck it. 2 out of 6.
I was going to say try to cross running water, but, you know, play the hands you dealt, I guess.
Yeah, I'm on theme.
If you are approached by a forest demon, what should you do?
Also, fuck it. It's lonely out there in the woods.
All right. There's going to be a lot of blips and bleeps in this episode, folks. If you are stranded without food and your friends have died, what is the best way to eat them?
I mean, I would cook them. I'm not going to eat that shit raw. That's just crazy.
I feel like Tracker was eating them raw.
He was definitely eating them raw. They were floppy and bloody.
But they were in a plane crash. They could have burned up, like, just to a perfect crisp.
Oh, it's
like
possible.
I put a nice sear
I
on
suppose. No, at least Todd was thrown from the plane and impaled on a giant tree branch. Also, the wreckage of that plane was very meager.
Anyway, great episode. Until next time.
I'll be in the woods dying from my lack of
I'm going to be
survival
keeping
skills.
it spooky. Dying of fucking everything you see.
Oh, hey, at least I'll go out.
You're like round
living
eyes.
the dream. I'll die the dream. Joe, I had a dream after watching this episode. After watching them eat each other and fuck each other and be crashed on a plane. So, in my dream, I was stuck down in a ravine. And we were like, basically, same deal. Plane crash, like desert island type situation. We're all stuck down there. Someone found this mirror and reflected the sun's rays like a huge, gigantic yellow laser into the sky. And the Goodyear blimp saw the mirror reflection and came to rescue us. And so we all went to gather our things, but Professor Snape had stolen them all. And we were just about to kick Professor Snape's ass, and then I woke up.
Whoa. Special thanks to Johnathan Olson for composing our theme music. You can email him at stepwisestudios to get your own electronic and synth pop songs.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Jeff.
Rerun for your life!